This is week 4, Mount Nebo and the Promised Land. Mount Nebo is the place where Moses dies. He climbs up a mountain at 120 years old. He can see the Promised Land, but not enter it. This is a really interesting and significant moment in theology because Moses was the one to bring the people out of Egypt. He brought them into the wilderness where they wandered for 40 years. And you get this sense from God that they were meant to wander for 40 years. The whole time they're complaining, they're starting to pray to other gods. There's a whole golden calf scene. There's a bunch of times when they don't know the way. They start thinking about going back to Egypt. They say that when we were in Egypt, at least we had structure. And they start pining for the food that they got in their life of slavery. There's always this weird, awkward time, the wilderness, right? Where people don't know what to do with themselves, where we get lost, where it's hard to imagine where we're going from here. And then from the top of Mount Nebo, Moses sees the promised land, the place that he can see, but he'll never enter. And the promised land in Exodus was believed to be the land of milk and honey, which is a bit funny because neither milk nor honey grow naturally without animals intervening. Yet both milk and honey come from a harmony that we have with nature. They are some of the good life, right? There's a sweetness to milk and honey. There's a joy to it. They make some of the best things in life come from milk and honey. So they signify the good life, the eat, drink, and be merry and have ice cream kind of life. And what's more is that milk and honey aren't damaging to the animals that produce them. So the harmony with nature continues. Its sense there of working alongside naturally with animals in a way that's sustainable for you and for the animals. It's interesting that Moses is seen as a great leader because he brings people out of the land of Egypt, out of slavery, and then he comes and he gives them the Ten Commandments, but no further. Now we have a new leader rise up in the book of Judges, and his name is Joshua. And Joshua is going to be the person who takes them once Moses dies on the mountain, on Mount Nebo. Joshua takes them to the Jordan River, which is sort of the boundary waters. Here again, just like the Nile, the river is a place of transcendence. It's a place of transition from one life to the next. And it's no surprise that at this river, where where Joshua is going to bring the Israelites into the promised land. That's also where John the Baptist returns to do his baptisms, where Jesus is baptized in the Jordan River outside of town, because this place of transition is a beautiful moment for lives of people who want to do something new. And so Joshua picks up the mantle, like the literal physical mantle, like a scarf kind of thing that he wears around his neck that signifies that he is the new leader. But you have to feel bad for him a little bit. Yeah, I feel bad for both of them. For Moses, that he never gets to enter the promised land, and for Joshua, that he lives his entire life in the shadow of a great leader. I think we all know that feeling of, I don't know, feeling like you live somebody else's life or you're following somebody who was great before you. And it can be a little daunting at times. And you always get compared to somebody who came before you. Have you ever felt like, you couldn't make any changes because so and so, the great, had done this thing before you even got there? Or somebody looked down on you just because you were young, or somebody looked down on you just because you were older, or in all those ways. Like leadership is such an interesting thing where it's not just about power, it's about influence. And so Joshua has a little bit of tough time with influence. And so when he gets all the way to outside the promised land, when they are at the river Jordan, he turns to his people and he says, "Hey, listen, I know that we've been wandering for a tough time." And by the way, now they're like ready to venerate Moses, even though they spent his entire waking life complaining about him. But like posthumously, Moses is all of a sudden a great leader for them. And Joshua, in a moment of honesty, says, I don't really know if all of y'all are going to follow me once we cross into this land of milk and honey. You're going to have a lot of temptations, and one of them is just simply going to be to worship other gods. So why don't we just say, and I can't speak for you, but for me and my house, he says, we will serve the Lord. as you know, if you know me, that this quote means an awful lot to me because there's so many times in our lives when we can go in other directions where we can let something else lead our way that isn't God. And I think that choosing God is something that we do over and again. And isn't it interesting that it's not in the tough times necessarily where we lose our ability to follow God. It's in the good times, the times of plenty, in the land of milk and honey. That's when our temptations come about. So I really like looking up to these leaders, and I really like the idea that as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. How about you?